So hello and welcome to today's video, and today we'll be going over 5 obscure facts about Bully. And when I say obscure, I mean stuff the average fan might not know. So let's get on with the first fact, and that is Sean Lee wasn't actually considered at all to compose the iconic soundtrack. In an interview with lead designer Mike Scupper, he spoke a bit about Bully's development and revealed they never intended to go with a purely original soundtrack by Sean Lee at all. They instead experimented with music multiple times before they decided they wanted to hire somebody to compose the soundtrack instead. Mike said it was a long process, but many influences played their part in giving the game its own identity. The same thing goes for the game's iconic score, which wasn't always set to be the instrumental masterpiece it ended up becoming. After a few attempts at a licensed soundtrack, like Grand Theft Auto, one build of the game even had Jimmy carrying around a steampunk looking music player, it became clear we had to use an instrumental score. Beyond the opening track, I recall this started with references based on factions, locations and mission styles, and what Sean Lee composed blew everyone away. It tapped into all the varied references perfectly, and had such unique flavour. While there aren't many references to the licensed soundtrack at all in the final release, in the game's files, at least on the PC, they do mention a deleted music store, where the player would be able to purchase music and only one known track is listed, which is Frankie Bushwick's Rockin' Polka Party, and Jimmy would have played that on his MP3 player. This is also weird since there is no artist named Frankie Bushwick at all in the real world. This could imply that Rockstar were going to go the GTA 3 and Liberty City Stories route by hiring either incredibly obscure artists that nobody's ever heard of, or just making up their own artists to sort of blend in with the game's world, like Connor and Jay were in Grand Theft Auto 3 and Liberty City Stories. They're not real, they're just aliases made up by Rockstar. Fact number 2. One of the things that Bully was controversial for was its inclusion of LGBT content by letting Jimmy kiss boys alongside girls if the player really wanted to. But of course this wasn't always the plan. Jacob Crab, I hope I pronounced that right, spoke about this on his blog where he put this. When I first brought up the idea of letting Jimmy kiss boys as well as girls, the whole romance thing was very low priority and no one cared. We were trying to make the game work on a much more fundamental level and stressing about the deadlines we were having to meet. Later, near the end of the project, when the flirting and the making out stuff was brought up again, and things are more or less under control, I brought up the idea of gay romance again. This time people felt it was just far too complicated to add in, and it was far too late into the project and everything was already recorded. We were just trying to bring the game home, we were not trying to add stuff anymore. It's not that there were any objections to the idea itself, it was just a schedule and mental fatigue thing near the end of a hard development cycle. So when I told them it really wasn't complicated, a bunch of the male pedestrians already had romance dialogue anyway, and that Jimmy's existing dialogue could work without exception. All we had to do was just tag these male characters as romanceable and we were good to go. And it got added in the short order and it worked out incredibly well. Now what's interesting about this is a few of the male characters Jimmy can kiss are never seen flirting with girls anyway. These being Trent because there's no girls in the Bullies, Cornelius because he's heavily implied to be gay anyway, and Duncan because Zoe is never seen in free mode as a townie. So making these boys be gay or bisexual actually saved them from some cut content. Fact number 3. Bully's map was going to be about twice the size it was. Now it's no secret Bully had to be cut down substantially due to being a late PlayStation 2 release, but during development there were going to be sewers which Jimmy could use to get through the map quicker, a bit like The Sims on Game Boy Advance, alongside being a place where he could race some go-karts too. According to the entire sewer area was about the same size as Bullwurf itself, and he described the area as being nuts and it got cut for unknown reasons. Maybe it was just far too powerful for the PlayStation 2, or it was too big and didn't have much going for it outside racing and some fast travelling. According to fellow Bully weeaboo Simon Bestia, the interior ID for the removed sewers still exists. The interior ID is 14, but don't get too excited because all models, textures and collisions were removed entirely, only the lighting remains. So Jimmy ends up in eternal nothingness, if he ends up in here somehow. Now unless the 2005 build of Bully surfaces, we'll probably never know what the sewers are going to look like. Fact number 4. Bully was close to being cancelled. A few developers have spoken about their time developing Bully over the years. Mike Scupper said there were a lot of hurdles for the development team to overcome. It was our first open world game, which was a relatively unexplored genre at the time. The ambition of a new open world IP with a very small team size made it very difficult to accurately plan our expectations. Certainly not an easy game to schedule. The possibility of cancellation came up quite a few times, but there was always this gut feeling that it was going to make it. It had to, because we put so much into it. That long emotional ride played some mind tricks on me and the rest of the team as well. Another employee, Andrew Wood, actually said that the atmosphere of the office during Bully's development was chaotic and there was a high turnaround rate due to people quitting. Rockstar's quality was incredibly high and they would refuse to ship a title they deemed not up to their standards. And that is likely what Mike Scupper was referring to when he brought up Cancellation and the emotional stress caused by it. But don't assume that the team hated working on Bully. Many have said they really enjoyed working on it. They just didn't like the stress or the working conditions they had to put up with. And finally, fact number 5, Bully may have been about younger children at some point. Back in 2010, Rockstar Games teased an official art book release called Digital and Analog, The Art and Science of Rockstar Games, to celebrate their 10th anniversary, and would feature 544 pages of concept artwork from everything they ever worked on: Grand Theft Auto, Manhunt, Red Dead, and of course Bully. Priced in at €98, £89 or $130. Now the art book, to quote Amazon UK's listing, featured hundreds of colour photographs and never before published videoscapes, all culled from the archives of the creators. However, sadly the book was canned and only 2 known images of it exist online. One of them is just what the book would look like, nothing too interesting here, and the other one has a much different looking version of Bully for some really strange reason. We can see the concept of the logo was much more childlike, and the concept art itself looks like it could be of a much younger version of Jimmy wielding a water gun. We can also see the artist's rough sketch of the character getting more details as it went on. Now of course I said we don't have any more of this because the entire book got canned, but speaking as a Rockstar fan as a whole, I would have loved to have seen this release. Imagine just seeing all the deleted and extremely different variations of characters and weapons and locations from Bully, San Andreas, Vice City, or even some cancelled projects possibly. I mean, here alone Bully looks to be incredibly interesting with the original art style concept. But that's it for today's video. Those are the 5 obscure facts about Bully, and I hope to see you all at the next video. So thank you for watching and have a great day.